connecting Dominica within the Caribbean. Join the conversation on the Global View on Q. Tune in, call us, have your say. The Global View on Q, only on Q95, the big station.
Good evening. Good evening to you in Radio Land and in Internet World. Thank you for choosing Q95. This is the Global View on Q. Very warm welcome to all of our Q family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G, and it's Tuesday, June 11, 2024. It's the 24th Tuesday of 2024, and it's exactly 8:04 p.m. at Q95, the big station. We're live on our radio frequencies on QTV, on Facebook and YouTube. Follow us at Q95 FM Radio. Share the live, like our pages. The on-air phone numbers are on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Be sure to get the latest breaking news and reviews on Q95. And why? Because you know it's true if you heard it on Q. So we continue to revive the spirit of grace, love, peace, and prosperity and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. We take the opportunity to extend our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of the late Philip Nassif, a truly great entrepreneur, great businessman and family man, a great source of inspiration for young and upcoming entrepreneurs. May his soul rest in peace. And we also extend our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and the colleagues of the late eminence Kelvin Edward Cardinal Felix, for whom a funeral mass will be held tomorrow, June 12th, at the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Castro St. Lucia. A memorial mass honoring him is also scheduled to take place at the Cathedral Chapel in Roseau on Wednesday, June 19, 2024. A truly great but humble man who really cared about his fellow men and women. He deserves every honor. May his soul also rest in eternal peace. So it's our 24th Global View on Q for 2024, and we continue to engage with our cherished listeners and our distinguished guests. Tonight, Dr. Irving Andre, outstanding engineer and inspirational youth leader, now setting the stage for youth leadership engagement in public service as Senator Delbert Paris. And later on, we hope to be joined by passionate on the phone. We hope to be joined by passionate advocate for agriculture and the people of Roseau constituency, Mr. Glenroy Soso Coffey, and also possibly Dr. Thompson Fontaine, both of whom right now, they may join us by phone a bit later if they are able to find a moment in their already fixed schedules and commitments, working on the ground in their constituencies. All illustrious sons of Dominica. So here are my talking points tonight. It's all about electoral reform and electoral commission. Dr. Andrew will talk to us about the new proposed lopsided electoral reform legislation that is being proposed by the DLP regime, allegedly to maintain its election winning legacy at any cost. So what is the role of the Electoral Commission in ensuring free and fair elections? Is the Commission poised to show the world that it is willing to serve as a modern-day Pontius Pilate for a Pied Piper? Will the Commission allow democracy to be condemned? Will passport sellers betray the trust of the people of Dominica? Or will the Commissioner stand up and be counted in Dominica's history by rejecting the regime's interference in the electoral processes? Will the silence of Dominicans say to the Commission and to the DLP regime, go ahead and crucify Dominica's democracy? Or will they stand up and tell the commissioners in no uncertain terms that they mean business and that they're preparing to fight the good fight for the reforms that the people want? The people must not allow the DLP regime to dictate to the Electoral Commission, which is a creature of the Constitution, as to how and when the commissioners and the chief elections officer should do their work as regards electoral reforms. The DLP regime has to respect the Commission's authority and responsibility to go through the draft laws line by line, page by page, take as much time as they need to review the DLP regime's self-serving, myopic tunnel vision proposals for reforms that appear to be geared solely to achieve their narrow interest of serving the winning legacy, or preserving the winning legacy of their leader at any cost. So I think somebody's mic may be open, but maybe if you can turn off your mic, mute your mic, that would be helpful. Thanks a lot for that. And yes, what I'm saying is that this regime should leave the commission alone. And I hope they will tell the DLP government when they are ready to submit their comments after their due deliberations on the hundreds of pages of text which took many months to compile by legal luminaries who allegedly paid some $750,000. Is democracy truly in peril right now as we speak? Is it in peril? Let's find out tonight on a Global View on Q how the new legislation could create what some describe as a false so-called Dominica Labour Party dynasty in Dominica, which is allegedly transitioning from a democracy to an autocracy with the potential to slide down the slippery slope into a full-fledged dictatorship. In other words, the death of democracy via legislation. Who knows? We may all be shocked at what some discern that the regime may have in store for Dominica. So it continues to be all about the fierce urgency of securing appropriate reformed electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations and stopping autocracy in its tracks right now through people's power. The ERC seems to be mobilizing for people's action. They are on the right track. The fierce urgency of establishing unity ahead of the next general election to rescue and revive Dominica's economy is right now. This is the fierce urgency of now. We are in fact pleased that the EWP and the ERC collaborated to deliver a timely Dominica Economic Revival Summit, spearheaded by Dr. Thompson Fontaine, and to which Dr. Thompson Fontaine and Senator Del extensively with their presentations and their valuable inputs. They will talk to us about that tonight. The first Dominica Economic Revival Summit was timely, almost like divine intervention in this season of collateral damage of despotic rule that is in full bloom. I'm sure that most right-thinking people are now saying enough is enough. Every day we hear a different issue. Is it time to relieve the rampant unemployment, the sidelining of local contractors, and Delbert will tell us all about that later, and other service providers, and to stop the ongoing willful persecution of opposition leaders and independent thinkers in Dominica? It is time to end the victimization and the discrimination against people with a different opinion. It is high time to investigate the obscene wealth of cronies and crooks and to eliminate the silence of the lambs who are being led to the slaughter every single day. Are Dominicans truly ready to participate in appropriate, peaceful mass mobilization actions to stop this chaos in Dominica? Most Dominicans are now convinced, I certainly am, that this is what is required. As we always say, sitting on the fence or hiding in the shadows can no longer be a part-time pursuit, far less a full-time strategy. So my guest tonight, Dr. Irving Andre, Mr. Senator Delbert Paris, and hopefully So Coffee and Dr. Fontaine, will join us by phone and will share their views on these and other issues. And we'll engage with you, our fellow Dominicans, to decide on actions for the way forward to secure free and fair elections, which will give us good, accountable, and transparent governance and return us to the path of democracy and respect from the regional and international community. I'm sure they will share their views on the imperative to reform our electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations through peaceful people's power. Yes, through peaceful people's power. So let's stop leaders and their rich foreign friends from getting richer, while ordinary hardworking Dominicans keep getting poorer, still have to face a high cost of living, a growing food insecurity, which is a direct result of killing our agriculture or tourism or manufacturing or our export earnings. Every day we hear about different problems, electricity going up, everything going up. Poor people are struggling. We hear about people wearing all kind of shoes with all kind of price, and yet poor people are still struggling to pay a water bill and a light bill. So we must get the CBI revenues returned to the Treasury to be used to rebuild and transform the major structures and pillars of the economy, and to stop the alarming decline in the quality of our healthcare services, and now lacking in our health clinics and our hospitals, the despair and dismay of our dedicated local healthcare professionals. You know, we feel for them. It is high time to put the brakes. Young people fleeing, certainly feeling the need to flee their country because the poor economy gives them little hope as Dominica continues to collapse every day in the existing corrosive policy environment. So we all look forward to seeing the layout and design, a new direction, a new plan, a paradigm shift for the economy and the society based on solid foundations of major pillars like agriculture, like manufacturing, agri-processing, and adding value to our local natural resources, the use of renewable energy, taking advantage of opportunities in the fast-growing global knowledge or IT industries. With the support of our diaspora experts, investors, and allies, we look forward to the follow-up events and activities arising out of the first Dominica Economic Revival Summit. So I've been saying for some time now myself that no government should remain in power for too long, as power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So it is high time for a change of government to restore democracy and bring back dignity and hope to our youth and our country. So we all look forward to even more concrete suggestions as to the way forward and forward actions that patriots must consider how they can play a meaningful role in ensuring appropriate reforms of Dominica's electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations. And so it is imperative that we all embrace national unity now, all hands on the same deck, to secure good, caring, accountable governance in our nature island, enable ordinary Dominicans to make a decent living, improve their living standards and quality of life, and enable all of us to make ourselves truly economically independent in a democratic environment and stem these tidal waves of Dominicans fleeing away from really serious problems of the inability to pay bills and take care of their families. Distinguished guests and you, our cherished listeners, viewers, and callers from at home in Dominica, in the region, and globally, you will call and help us expand and broaden the dialogue and opine on the merits and demerits of what we are witnessing in Dominica today in comparison to what once transpired here many years ago. So we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, to stay with us on our various platforms on Q95 radio, on television in Dominica, on our live stream on the internet, on our Facebook and YouTube platforms, and so on. And as you do every Tuesday, stay with us and with me, Mr. John, the Global View on Q, on the big station. Our usual huge shout out, and hugs and love and appreciation, and a big thank you to our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, police and welfare officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, and public and private sectors, patriots at home and abroad. We welcome every Dominican tonight and friends of Dominica to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, in every nook and cranny, every village, every community at home in Dominica, in the region and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, as usual, for keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, the indefatigable Lambi on the console, directing the telephone traffic. We will take your calls as soon. Well, Lambi, as you know, the people's voice is always a priority of the Global View. So call us anytime after we start during the program. Just make a sign and we will take your calls. So I hope that I have helped to set the stage for some kind of meaningful dialogue here tonight on the Global View on Q. So let's get started. I go first to Dr. Irving Andre, for his opening remarks to get the ball rolling on our conversation tonight. Dr. Andre?
Yes, good evening, Mr. G. Good evening, Mr. Delbert Paris, the fruit of the loom, the future of the island. Good evening, the venerable Lambi. Good evening to your listeners. Good evening to Kuvin, who is in the background making sure that everything operates smoothly. Good evening to your listeners and your devotees of this radio station and radio program. We are on the verge of the hurricane season, so we are getting to be alert over impending doom. Annually, it's a ritual that we have to go through. In 2017, we were besieged by a storm of biblical proportions. But tonight we contemplate another type of storm, an electoral storm, a storm that in many respects represents the crucifixion of Dominica, of democracy in Dominica. Virtually every institution of good governance has been wounded fatally by this storm, whether it's the Electoral Commission, whether it's the public accounts institution, whether it's the law enforcement institution, whether it is, quite frankly, the speakership in the House of Assembly, whether it's the prosecution of criminal offenses. Sadly, the contamination transcends virtually every institution of good governance in Dominica. But we face yet another storm. We face another storm in which those who have been given the sacred trust of safeguarding Dominica's democracy are furiously engaged in its destruction under the guise of modernization. What has been proposed in terms of the 3 pieces of legislation is nothing more than a manipulation to ensure that the reins of power are fixed in stone or concrete in the hands of a chosen few. The proposed election bills are designed to achieve one goal: to ensure that any change in governance is nigh impossible. Nothing else explains the cynical and manipulative and capricious manner in which those in power have proposed a slew of reforms that in fact are designed to achieve one end: to ensure that the political directory remain in power in perpetuity. Think of it, and I will just name the critical reforms that are designed to achieve that goal. 1, the virtual absence of any concrete proposals with respect to campaign finance reform. Virtually every Caribbean island, English-speaking Caribbean, have sought to address this threat to democracy. That is to say, the principle that you cannot have one side spending an inordinate amount of money on elections while the other side or the competitors or those in opposition can hardly summon anything coming even close to what is being spent. The answer is clear. So what they propose is a situation where you have blood money from Africa. You have laundered money from various European countries. You have monies from the Middle East, hidden, tainted, dirty money, can all flood in and be a participant in Dominica's elections. And they call that modernization. They call that fairness. And the person who is driving that sword into the side of democracy is no less than the Attorney General. The Attorney General who has the sacred duty of being counsel for the people. His voice is silent. There is no indignant resignation over this blatant corruption in power. All that we are greeted with and treated with is an overwhelming silence, a definite silence, a silence of complicity, a silence of corruption. There's no mention, no specific mention of transportation of voters with the clear express or implied purpose of voting for a party or for an individual. No express stipulation in the proposed legislation that this is wrong, this is a crime, as proposed by someone called Sir Dennis Byron, who was paid a king's ransom to come up with a slew of proposals. And remember what we were told: as soon as he submitted his proposed legislation, they would be ushered and made into law. But even that wasn't good enough for the political directorate. After that so-called consultation, which was nothing more than a charade, they incorporated some of what their own sycophants proposed during these consultations. What is their proposal with respect to who should vote? Their proposal is simple. With some exceptions, Once you are on the list, the voters list, nobody can remove your name from that list. You are free to vote. And the effect of that failure is clear. It's a Pandora's box in terms of electoral manipulation. And you remember during the consultations, many folks abroad were saying, "You are depriving me of my right." Those who got relief from COVID, those who have access to food banks, those who can shop at Dollar General, Dollar Tree, Dollar Branch, Ollie's, the restores, who can receive relief from hardship in the adopted lands, compared to those who live in Dominica. The poor, not even subsidies for staples that they receive. While the business persons, many of them, they receive corporate welfare. Wasn't there a foreign company, Mr. G, whose $9 million tax debt was excused? What about a slew of those persons who get duty-free concessions, including those who wear the biggest crosses around their necks? They enjoy that benefit while the poor are crucified. They are denied a living wage. There was a video on social media, an employee of the NEP program breaking down the door in Point Michelle for her money, for the pittance of a wage that she is supposed to receive. That is what these folk are condemning Dominica to, condemning democracy to death. That's what we have to deal with. So there's no mention of campaign finance reform. There's no mention of bribery and treating insofar as transportation of voters are concerned. And obviously, there is no indication of the Electoral Commission having the ability and the authority, except in narrow circumstances, to remove your name from the list if you've been out of the country for a certain period of time. So the Electoral Commission have been emasculated. And with the exception of two of its members, they are meek as sheep. Why? Because there's a blatant conflict of interest. They're involved in the trade, not in the slave trade, but in the enslavement of Dominica as a country, hawking passports to the highest bidder, ensuring that the net proceeds of sale of these passports are used for nefarious purposes and do not find their way into the consolidated fund. That's why they love it so much. That's why you have pious proclamations. If not passports, then what? Every day we are besieged with new purchases, news about new purchases, new hotels springing up like zebra on the landscape. And after a year or two, you see that they've been abandoned. Because in most cases, not in all, but in most cases, the purpose of engaging in that type of economic activity is to line your pockets. It's not a legitimate economic activity. It's one which provides a means to enrich themselves with lucre that should have been deposited into the consolidated fund. And so we stand at a crossroads where democracy, as I indicated, is literally on a cross with a crown of thorns over its neck, with a gaping wound in its side caused by those who have been given the sacred duty of protecting it. With many of us, unfortunately, closing our silence, saying through that silence, "Crucify him, crucify him." As Shakespeare would have said, "Et tu, Brute, you of all people are betraying me. You who stand to lose the most. You whose yourselves are being crucified by economic hardship. You who are not even paid on time with the meager wage that you receive. You who have to humble yourself while what is rightfully yours is stolen under your very eyes in plain sight. You who have been deprived of your land without any compensation. You who have been deprived of your jobs in the public work department. You who have been bypassed for promotion, not because of anything you did, not because you're not competent, but because there is some person to be rewarded for his or her loyalty. You who have worked hard to get ahead but have been denied. As Weeks said some time ago, Inspector Weeks a few years ago, those who are validated are those who lie prostrate at the feet of corruption. Is that the perpetual reality that you dream of? Is that the cross that you wish to bear against your will? Because you have not realized that you have a voice that is more powerful than any other voice, particularly if that voice sings a chorus of equality, of decency, of integrity. Dominica deserves better. As we speak, there's a case filed in the United States and Florida involving St. Kitts and their CBI program. One of the allegations, one of the assertions, one of the pleadings of the claimant is that a former prime minister received, or get this, between $5,000 and $10,000 per passport sold. And then we understand why they love passports so much and the sale of passports. Not to build houses where the sewage system is compromised even before people move into. Not to build houses where as soon as you die, go ask wants to be Mr. G. I know you have a telephone line to him. What happened to his house within 48 hours after he died? I don't know about Sogo Fly. What happened to those houses which are supposed to be owned by you? They are taken away and given to another person to be bought with 30 pieces of silver as that crucifixion continues. To an extent that is nowhere evident in any of the other islands. And so we face a crossroads. And so we have to confront this ugly reality that stares us in the face. And we have to ask ourselves, what is our role in this scheme of things where we're being deprived of our very livelihood, of our decency and our integrity, where our children have to take refuge, where those who remain, unfortunately, because of a dearth of employment, have to peddle in drugs, where those who remain, unfortunately, have to nurse old grievances and new ones, and take out their frustrations on their fellow brothers and their fellow sisters, where the young ladies in the community, many of them, have to compromise themselves to go get a scholarship or a job, where ministers of government have to weep as they behold the violation of their own daughters. I hate to speak Greek on your program, Mr. G, but I have no choice. You pasadien. It is time to stop. Mr. Paris, it's all yours.
Well, you said I had a line to some of these fellas on the other side. One of them told me, Mogai Hali pay you. Because, I mean, it's really terrible. A man dies and 10 minutes after he's dead, you check in the apartment room. He could, I wanted to leave that to one of his children or something. You take it away from him. Tell the children, no, you can't get that. I have to give that to somebody else. You're dead. The guy dead already. But Delbert, here's this. You heard Dr. Andre, but I heard a young attorney on the Freedom Party program on Wednesday night. And that young attorney, a very young, aspiring, uninspiring attorney, she said that this whole thing, these new proposals that have been suggested are betrayal. In other words, not mine. That's an attorney, plenty smarter than me. And she said, this legislation that's been proposed leaves us worse than what we have right now. We heard Dr. Andrews saying everything is just trying to compromise the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission is being told, okay, listen, you have to give me back your recommendations by so and so day. That date has passed, I think, 2 weeks ago. I mean, this is a creature of the Constitution. And you have to allow the people in their deliberate judgment to go through the legislation and then say, okay, here are our thoughts. And obviously, the Electoral Commission has a responsibility also to listen to the people. And the people spoke. Dr. Andre, right there on our homepage, Dr. Andre has 21 points that came out of all this consultation from the Electoral Reform Coalition, all the major groups. 21 points. How many of them are in there? The only thing we see in there is somebody trying to protect somebody else's legacy, which is in the first place the reason why. From this email way back in 2008 or 2009, that prevented the commission from going ahead of its work at the time. So Delbert, your thoughts on that? And I know that you're a man who is very concerned about free and fair elections to get good governance that is going to ensure that some of the sectors, especially the sector that you're in, which is a critical sector, to allow this thing to show growth and for local contractors to really benefit from all this largesse of money instead of having 200 and something million dollars going out for foreigners. So let's get your take on all of that.
Mr. G, thank you so much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to be here. Dr. Andre, the rest of the family over in the studios at Q95, and all of our listeners tonight. It's always a pleasure to be back here. For lack of a better term, speaking truth to power and trying our best to keep this conversation as it relates to Dominica's development in this time, at this stage in our history, to keep it in sharp focus. One of the things that I think that happens all the time, and that is often by design, is to sort of muddy the water of the conversation so that we lose the essence of why we're talking about things like electoral reform and good governance and the rule of law and those sorts of things, to inundate it with enough nonsense and with enough distractions so that people get tired of the conversation and the real essence and spirit of the debate. And the attorney's right. This is a betrayal. What we're having here is a betrayal. And Mr. G, quite frankly, it's sad that we're still having debate, this level of debate and this level of discourse nationally about electoral reform, as if it is something that is optional, as if it is something that we can choose whether or not we should have. One of the things that I think we have lost sight of in the debate is the real reason for good and ethical elections in a democracy. It's not happenstance or something that is a by the way or some wishy-washy idea. The reason for that, the true essence for that, and why that was designed, is in order to ensure that the governance of our people in that process, that we have the best of us leading the rest of us, to ensure that we can have the best standard of living, quality of life, and social welfare that we can amass with our resources. It's not about winning and losing and one set achieving more than the other. Having an ethical, free functioning democracy is for the betterment of every single one of us. Ensuring that at all times, or at most material times, that the best of us lead the rest of us. So we put things in place like a system that allows the majority to choose through competence, demonstrated competence, or some qualifying metric, the individuals who have shown the competencies to ensure that we can use our resources to make life better for every one of us. Mr. G, you said that you weren't an attorney earlier on. Neither am I. We're in the presence of greatness. Dr. Andre is here, and he can put that in legal jargon for us later on. But really, for the layman, this is what elections are about. This is what good, free, and fair elections are about. ensuring that people's lives, whatever we do, people's lives, not one set, not one faction, not one color, but all of us, that all of us life is better because of the decisions that we're making. Now, talking about these sets, I have them right here. These sets of legislations, after going through and spending so much money on a previous set, it is actually a betrayal. It's not fair, because here's what it does. It does not result in an ethical process, in a fair process that gives everyone, not just a color, not just one color, or blue or red or yellow or green or orange, but gives everyone access to participate in a transparent process that allows us to select the leaders and the administrators that we think will make the best decisions for us and our future and the future of our children. That is what we're expecting the legislation to do. And this legislation doesn't do that by a long shot. Dr. Andre went out and he listed a number of areas that this thing should be addressing. Campaign financing, the cleansing of the voters list. And I mean, these things, if you look at them in their truest form, they're simple things. Nobody should be debating whether dead people should be off the list. That shouldn't be up for debate. It shouldn't be up for debate that if you're looking for a free and fair process, an ethical process, that everybody should be boxing at the same weight, right? We do it in sports all the time, Mr. G. That's why featherweights don't fight in heavyweights, in the heavyweight category. Right. Everybody boxes at their own level, right?
Yep.
That's what campaign financing, and Dr. Andre, feel free to correct me if I'm veering off here from the legal terms, but that's what campaign financing attempts to do, to make sure that we're at the same level, achieving the same thing with the same intentions, all right? The voter ID cards. In today's day, we want to make sure that you say you are who you say you are, and that you have a right to participate in this process, in a process that is going to affect our lives later on and affect the life of our children. Simple issues that our legislators shouldn't be fighting and battling over too much, but it's proven difficult. And Mr. G, we are at the stage now where I think the people, after all of the efforts for education now, have a decision to make. They have a decision to make whether they're going to accept these legislations or not. And they have a number of options. And the people that I know in Dominica, the true Christian people, I'm sure that they will choose all the avenues of peace, of logic, of good sense and good reason to express their dissatisfaction with what many are claiming to be a set of legislations that betray the trust of Dominicans and their intentions to have free and fair governance. But Mr. G, if we are unable, and I think for the better part of 25 years, we have not been able to achieve the right type of governance that we need as a country, type of governance that would ensure that in the way we use our resources and in the way we set up legislation, that it results in the best standard of living for all of us. I don't think we have been able to achieve that. And that is why, particularly in the area of construction, I like talking about construction, the construction industry, for more reasons than one.
Yeah, and I really want you to talk about it, because the construction industry in Dominica has been taking a licking.
It has been taking a licking, and it doesn't take a lot of research for you to see that. It doesn't take a lot of research for you to see that, and it doesn't take a lot of research for you to feel the direct impact of the degradation of the construction industry. And that is a direct result of poor governance. And that poor governance is because we have not been able to choose the people that we want, or to choose the right people that we want to govern this country for its development at this time in our history. And that's why electoral reform is important to all of our industries, to the development of all of our industries, not just for elections, but the development of all of our industries, including the construction sector. And I hope that people in and around Dominica can recognize the importance. There's a lot of people who say often that they don't like politics, and they don't want to get involved in politics, and they're not interested in the whole political atmosphere. And I understand why. It's because we have been beaten so many times, and it goes back to the issue of the muddying of the conversation. That is not clear. The conversation is not logical anymore, and we move away from the issue. But it is important that we get back into the governance of our country, and each of us take it personally, because it directly affects our life. Mr. G, the first area, and I will touch on a number of areas that we discussed at the recently concluded Economic Revival Summit, and the area of construction, and how we can overcome a number of the challenges that we are currently experiencing. Every one of us knows the impact of the construction industry in Dominica. Every business needs a house to operate from.
But Delbert, I want you to hold back on that a little bit, because you're going to spend some time on that, because that's very important.
Absolutely.
And somebody ancillary or related, activity and industries as well, because it's very important. That's the reason why we're talking about electoral reform. That's the reason why we're talking about free and fair elections. It's the reason why we want good governance that is going to be accountable and transparent, and that's going to be efficient and manage the economy and add value to our natural resources, so that our people can benefit from that by a decent living standard and quality of life. But
Absolutely.
I want to give you time to that. So I want to go back to Dr. Andre. Let us sort of wrap up some loose ends about this electoral reform thing, because Dr. Andre, there were so many basic things that have been left. I mean, this young lawyer, and now Delbert is saying this is really a betrayal. This new legislation will leave us much worse off than what we have at present. And in fact, the lawyer is saying there's no way that we should go forward with this. I'm not even sure that Dennis Byron would agree that these new proposals that have been done, I'm not sure he would agree we should go with that, and because he himself had suggested we should have electoral reform and campaign finance reform. So Dr. Andre, I want to go back to you. You could share some thoughts, and then let us focus what we need to do to ensure that we get those reforms that we really wanted, that we already discussed at length, including the campaign finance reform, and how to get it. Because it seems to me that what is going on now, over the last few weeks, the people in office now said, this is what we want. These three things is all. We're not looking at anything else, because they're not telling us so, but these are the three things that is going to help them preserve their winning legacy. Okay? Not to register, and make everybody go all over the world and register where they want, whom they want. And then once your name is on that, you can decide, okay, your name on it already, leave it there. Some basic things that have been proposed that are really just not best practices in the region or anywhere else in the world. And we have to talk about what it is that the people must do to ensure that the Electoral Commission is allowed to do its work. And even the minority members under the commission must be given the space to ensure that they do right by the people. And secondly, what it is that the people themselves need to do to ensure that they get the reforms that they want. Let's talk about that a little before we go on to the major sectors.
Well, to be fair to the government, they have telegraphed for a number of years now that they have absolutely no interest in genuine electoral reform. There is enough evidence that would choke a horse or a donkey. There is no mystery about that. With all the pontifications about, I hope they're serious about electoral reform, this whole thing is a joke. You ask the Attorney General tell us in which English-speaking Caribbean island is it evident that any of what they're proposing now has been enacted. He can speak in English, or he can speak in the language of Lakusetlang, but tell us, where is the template coming from? This is a template set by a would-be dictator. Nothing else is more evident and apparent than that sad and unfortunate reality. And the question is simply, are we content to be led to the slaughter like sheep? Are we content to do like the poor wretch in Lapland a few years ago, who was beaten allegedly? Well, it's more than allegedly. Apparently, there was evidence to confirm that, by a member of government. And the poor fellow, because he was given a house. Now, don't ask me about the quality of the house. His response was, "So beat me. I love the beating. It's so nice to feel that lash on my back." Is that a comment as to where we are psychologically in 2024? The Dominican people, those who dream of something better from the children who are taking off to greener pastures, they deserve better. They've been entrusted with this legacy of an island with infinite beauty, infinite possibility, where you can put zebra to grow on a concrete wall, for God's sakes, and it will sprout. What riches should we allow all that to go to waste? Should that scent be wasted in the desert air? Or should we be benefiting from that harvest? Should we be content with our second-class status in our own country? And should we see these people walk around with $2,000 shoe, smiling, laughing at us? And every day you are faced with a sad reality as to a new purchase. Now, mind you, there is nothing wrong if by the sweat of your brow you decide to purchase buildings or set up companies and so on. That is a wonderful example, because you will eat bread, hopefully mastiff, from Afuawi or from my good friend in Pottersville, who works every day in a bakery, or from Ruben's, or from Suki's. By the sweat of your brow, you enjoy that bread. But to get it in brown paper bags in the middle of the night, in helicopters flying and evading customs duties and depositing it to fellow conspirators, while you stand aside and look, that is an ultimate disgrace being foisted upon the Dominican people. And I refuse to believe that we are satisfied with that sad reality. Dominicans are very intelligent, you know. And some of the younger generation have two cell phones, one in the back pocket, one in the front pocket. Some of them even have one hidden in their socks. They have access to everything that goes on. The YouTube, the MyTube. They have this knowledge, this infinite knowledge at the fingertips. They understand this. Delbert Paris, the engineer, understands this. This is unsustainable. This hemorrhage of our resources, this defecation on our democracy, this disdain for everything that is decent in our island. We cannot accept this indefinitely. We have to come together in some fashion to take a stand and say, we deserve better. We deserve better. Why should we be satisfied with this when no other island in the Eastern Caribbean would be satisfied with it? Just do a search on all the islands. Campaign finance reform in Jamaica, campaign financing in Barbados, campaign finance reform in Antigua. They have all taken scrupulous steps to remedy this patent injustice. But we are going back. We are regressing. We're not progressing. and we call it modernization. Theft in office, we are modernizing that. Thank God Jolly's pharmacy now have security guards. Because even that is legitimized. The theft from Jolly's. Don't even talk about farmers. We have to bring back decency in governance. And those, as I said, who express indignation about this sad story, state of affairs, there is a sacred duty on them to do what is possible, to come together, to try to remedy those injustices that is being perpetrated on Dominicans on a daily basis. And we thank people like Delbert Paris, because we know the cost of standing up for what is righteousness. Ostracism, persecution, alienation, deprivation, stigmatization,
Victimization.
That is the fruits of standing up for what is right. But as I said, the born time will not last forever. The kingdom will fall. My good friend Humpty Dumpty told me that one day. So there is always hope, and there is always reason to dream of a better reality.
But
I pass it on to young Mr. Paris.
Well, it's always good to pass things on to the youth, Irving. But Lambi, we will take some calls, I mean, you can stand by. The calls coming, interrupt us, just give a little wave and we'll take the call. We want to hear from the people tonight. I'll let you give out the numbers now before I go to Delbert, and then I will go to Delbert, and then you can interrupt us as we go along.
The Global View on Q, taking your calls right now. The numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. Those are the local numbers, and the international overseas number is 305-432-9624. Let me run those numbers one more time. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, and 305-432-9624. Back to you, Mr. G.
Yes. So, Lam, you'll take the calls as they come. You just give us a little wave and we'll pick up, But Delbert, I want to come back to you because, we're talking about this thing, David. All what we're saying is this. Elections have consequences. If elections are not free and fair on a level playing field, what is going to happen is that you're not going to get the best, as you said, the best of us to lead the rest of us. You're not going to get that. Because once it's skewed in the favor of one party because they have big dark money or something, it's not going to happen. So elections have consequences. The consequences of our elections that we've had that have not been free and fair is the disaster that we've had over the past 20 years. That is the consequence of bad elections, tainted elections. I didn't say that. It was the CCJ and people like Irving Andre, his colleagues, who said the elections are tainted. We should not have more elections under those conditions. They said so, and yet we went ahead and had more elections. We called 2 of them within a couple of years. We just love to call elections. Every Christmas is an election on our back. But what do we get from that? You get all kind of nonsense happening. CBI money that's not coming back to the country. All kind of people building things all over the place. Money just fleeing the country, but that should be remaining in the pockets of local contractors. Just live in the country. Employment that should go to Dominicans is going to foreigners, and our Dominican children are just running from the country looking for greener pastures. When you could have those pastures right there at home. Let's talk about the consequences of those bad elections on sectors like your construction sector and these other major sectors of the country.
Absolutely, Mr. G. You hit the nail right on the head. And that is one of the things that I hope that going forward, from the Global View and Q to the morning show programs and the afternoon programs, we can help to stay focused on these issues because they're connected. They're connected. It's not just about win or lose. You know, this guy won elections, the other guy lost, and he's mad because he lost. No, the result of the elections goes far past election day and polling day. It goes into how we live every day after that. And the first way it starts to affect us is in the policies, Mr. G and Dr. Andre. Is in the policies and the practices that the elected officials start to implement and adopt. That is the first way any of our sectors are being affected. Because you elect people to lead that will develop a policy adopting strict guidelines for economic development that will help them to create an atmosphere and to adopt practices within the different sectors, including construction, that will better people's lives. Some of those guiding principles that we seem to be continuously ignoring is the principle of sustainability in development. Sustainability that ensures that your investment promotes environmental and sustainable long-term economic growth. The principle of equity, ensuring fair distribution of investment and benefits across the different regions and the population. The guiding principle of transparency, efficiency, and accountability. Some of these are just a few of the guiding principles, Mr. G, that should be guiding our policies. But it is clear that for the last 24, 25 years, the individuals that are at the helm of leadership within our country don't understand that, or they don't have an appreciation for that. Or it might be that those guiding principles are not at the top of their priority list as it relates to them maintaining their position. But what we have seen is the destruction of a number of our industries, a number of our sectors, and the lives of people in Dominica. That's who ultimately suffers for bad policy and poor practices that we adopt. And that type of behavior, it trickles into the way we adopt in the way we design legislation. One of those legislations, Mr. G, is the one that affects, well, not just construction, but the way we do public procurement in Dominica. In 2021, the Public Procurement and Contract Administrations Act was repealed and replaced with the new Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act. There was a lot of consultations done, particularly by the builders and contractors, and they left us with a caution. All right. I'm not sure if any of you were able to participate in that discussion back in 2021, even after the new bill was adopted in Parliament in December of 2021. The builders and contractors, the leadership, they left us with a caution out of all of the studies that they've done. And I would like to read it for it. It said that repealing the Public Procurement and Contract Administrations Act and replacing it would fail to achieve the purpose of the act that was passed. It would fail in the areas of achieving value for money, transparency, broad participation, fairness and equity, accountability, and clarity of the procurement process. It would fail to foster public confidence in the procurement process. It would fail to increase the economy and facilitate real domestic growth. It would fail to provide tangible evidence that the safeguards within the bill are effective in dealing efficiently with the offenses against those acts and with civil liberties. Importantly, it would depress the economy and the development of the private sector, and it would put to slumber the entrepreneurial spirit of young people. Mr. G, Dr. Andre, that was back in 2021. That was a caution from the leadership of the Builders and Contractors Association back in 2021. And they were spot on, because that is what we saw. That is what we continue to see happening every single day in Dominica as it relates to construction, but not just construction. How has that type of behavior affected the rest of the different industries connected to construction? How has it affected our banks and our credit unions? In the time where we have the largest amount of money flowing through our country in construction growth, we have 1.6 or 1.3 billion dollars up in Wesley, purportedly. We have 7 schools being constructed simultaneously. We have a marina, that ground just broke for a marina. How much of our credit unions have facilities on those sites? Do they have portfolios that they have heavy equipment portfolios there? We have truck. Do they have truck portfolios there? Were people able to go to the credit unions in Roseau and in Goodwill and in Marigat and so on and take out a policy for some heavy equipment and trucks? How are our credit unions and our banks benefiting from these projects? How are they benefiting from the housing market, the housing revolution that is constantly going on? How is the real estate market suffering from that? How is it being impacted? It's not just the construction sector. And that, Mr. G, if we're following along and we keeping this thing in focus, it is because of the bad policy and the bad legislative framework that we have adopted, because we keep allowing the wrong people to get elected. They are not the best of us, and that's why we keep suffering for it. And if 25 years hasn't taught us that, I don't know what else we need. And that is why we cannot allow this betrayal to go through, because it spells doom for another 25 years. It means we will never get out of, well, legally and ethically and peacefully, we will never get out from under this spell. And the perpetual suffering and disappearance of the middle class and disappearance of the private sector will continue if we fail to change the way in which we elect our leaders. This is the type of impact that it's having. Not just a win and lose and blue and red and so on, the fanfare and polling day. No, it is affecting people's life on a day-to-day basis across sectors. Mr. G, I want to talk about our Social Security for a while. I want to touch on our Social Security. I see Dr. Andre looking sad about it, but it is a serious situation, and it's one that is a little bit under the radar.
Dr. Andre, you can jump in anytime and just talk to Dr. Delbert, anytime.
No, I'll let me allow him to get his point across, because I think it's an important one.
Right.
So I'll respond in some fashion or expand, but let him get his point. Go ahead, Mr. Parrish.
Let's go, Delbert.
Absolutely. I could stay here for the next 2 hours on top, because it's a lot of information. Mr. G, there's a situation that has not completely manifested yet with the Social Security system, right? With the Social Security scheme. And it's worth investigating. It is worth investigating. The framework of Social Security, in layman's terms, is that you are able to benefit outside of all of the other things that they offer, the loans and so on, this and that and all. Is that you're able to contribute during your working life, so that afterwards you are able to get something. And it's nowhere close to what you were making at the peak of your employment, but it's something that can help to sustain you, right? If at the height of Dominica's development, as much people would like to claim this period is, I'm not sure when we'll do another international airport worth north of $1 billion. I'm not sure when the next time we'll be doing 7 schools at simultaneously. This is a big economic period. But if none of your, if hardly any of your locals are involved in working, who is paying Social Security? Who is contributing to the pool? And when these people, or when all of us can no longer work, what are we expected to get? What are we expected to benefit from? I'm using it in simple terms so that the ordinary individual can understand the predicament that we are in as a country. This scheme will fail. and it will not be able to sustain us and our parents later on. And what that is doing is continuously widening the gap and increasing the amount of vulnerable people that live in Dominica. And that is unfair. That is wrong. It is bordering on evil because we have enough resources. We have enough resources to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, that's fine.
Dr. Andre, I know you want to.
Yeah, well, Mr. Parrish said the scheme will fail. I'm the bearer of bad news. The scheme is failing. I mean, let me just give you an example without calling names. You have a teacher, former principal of a secondary school, taught over 30 years, and her grand monthly amount from the Social Security is about $550. It's below the poverty line, but she's one of the luckier ones. Most people have to fare with much less money. There are pensioners who cannot make ends meet. The fortunate ones are those who may have family abroad who can contribute the ubiquitous barrel, visit, and help with the essentials and so on. And there is no effort, no sustained effort to alleviate poverty, suffering, deprivation in the community, unless your morals have been painted red. At a time when we've never in the history of our country have had access to so much funds hidden in mysterious accounts. So much of the net proceeds of sales of passports have been used to buy properties all over this place. They have severed the historical link between hard work and acquisition. So they have plundered the moral capital of our country. It doesn't matter how you enrich yourself. In fact, you are mocked if you have to work 20, 25 years to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Mr. Parrish talked about the construction industry. Can you imagine this? Construction is going up all over the place. And many of our scribes and Pharisees, where are they? Not one can voice concern over what's happening. Where are our religious leaders? Not one can say this is not right. Not one has the audacity to say, well, look, I don't want any duty-free gas. There are people without roofs. I do not want any duty-free SUV. I stand on my principles and on my values. I wasn't born with an SUV. I don't need it. I can get around just fine. Stand on a pillar of integrity. Let me help to empower my colleagues by showing them how hard I work to put food on the table. And let's say something, because it's very consistent with what Mr. Parrish is saying. The opposition forces, they have a responsibility. They have a responsibility to provide relief to their fellow men and women. We're talking about production. There are many farmers who simply do not have the time or the resources to come to the market in Roseau or in Portsmouth or wherever. Where is the sustained economic program, whether on a monthly basis, that a certain community is identified and the farmers, those long-suffering farmers who have been deprived of markets and so on, are asked to convene in a central place where patriots from all over Dominica make a pilgrimage to that village to achieve 3 goals: to put money in the pockets of farmers or vendors those who've been screwed in particular. 2, to amass funds for the opposition or for those who dream of a better Dominica. And 3, most importantly, to forge a sense of unity and strength among those who have to face the wrath of persecution and deprivation and ostracism and victimization, as Mr. G has said so eloquently. Where is that sustained effort as opposed to a conference every 4 months? We have to think outside of the box. We have to think as we used to think at a time when we did not have electrical power equipment on the construction site. Now, I have to confess, I had to go to YouTube to look at how to use a hammer. But I have to assume there are people who are better than I. We have to call on those resources that made us build our own homes and move homes from one location to the other. And we have to dream of that time when we depend on things like subs. Now, Mr. G, I'm not talking about a submarine. I'm talking about people coming together. I think in some areas they call it a SUS or whatever it is.
They say they go in sub.
Something along those lines. I know it sustained my family for many years, if I recall correctly. We have to draw on those resources. One luxury we cannot afford: do nothing, because the social institutes, whatever it is, pittance,
You see,
cannot guarantee you a life above the poverty line.
you see, the reason why you're so right, we really should do nothing. That's the only thing we should not do, is to do nothing. Because we've done that and we see where we are. Now, remember, you see, I'm listening to Delbert, I'm listening to you, and I want to go back to this notion that elections have consequences. You see, because remember there was a time when we used to earn $180 million a year from bananas alone. There was a time like when we used to do that. What are we earning in bananas now? That's the consequences of elections. We were told, if not passports, then what? The passports made a whole ton of money, and none of it has gone into the construction sector. None of it has gone into the tourism sector. None of it has gone into the agribusiness sector. None of it has gone into the renewable energy sector. In other words, all the major sectors that we should be, major pillars of our economy that we should be relying on now to get in the foreign exchange, create the jobs, and so on, and help people to earn some wealth. None of that went in there. We hear about all kind of buildings going up in Dubai, all kind of places. That is what we're hearing. We hear about all this money leaving the country through foreigners just sending this money outside. Elections have consequences. If you take a policy decision, it's going to affect the enabling environment for your local businesses to thrive. The policy decision that we took caused us to be the last in the region. Let nobody fool you. We're the last in everything, last in GDP, last in everything you can think of. Just look at St. Kitts, where they were, where they are now. Because why? They've been changing their governments and ensuring to keep the people on their toes. Antigua, look at where it is. We're behind them. They've been changing the government. St. Lucia, look at where it is. They've been changing the government. Trinidad has been changing. But so all these countries, they are changing their government and showing that, as Delbert said, they're trying to look for the best of us to lead the rest of us, so that we can have efficiency, the right enabling environment, the policy environment to ensure that locals can add value to what we have and leave something for our children. That is what this whole thing about electoral reform and election means, you know. That is what it means. We have the example that for the last 25 years, we have not changed our government, and look at where we are. Doesn't that tell us something? That ought to tell us something. There's no way that you can keep a government in power so long. Because you know, Dr. Andre, what they said, that power corrupts. And then absolute power corrupts absolutely. We know that. And why are we still doing it? When we're looking at our neighbors, we run into St. Kitts for work. We run into Antigua. We run into Guadeloupe, we run into St. Lucia, we run in all over to the BVI, to St. Thomas. These people, and can't we see that the reason why we're running it because they're doing better than us? Why don't we do something to change our government, make sure you have better governance that are accountable, that is transparent, that has some kind of ability to transform our economy, some kind of ability to give us the best that we can be, make us the best that we can be, reach out for excellence. Why can't we just simply see that? I mean, look, we heard about this case in St. Kitts. You know, the fact of the matter is these cases are popping up from these programs. I believe the Prime Minister in St. Kitts now is doing every country to try to resolve this, but they're going to have some issues with that because some of the people were bad actors. But we're hearing about all kind of things about this company. Is it called Galaxy? And then we've been hearing about all these digital IDs that people are getting in all kind of countries, and they're using that now to get passports for lower than the cost of the economic cost. In terms of we're trying to beat the competition. We have this thing, we leave this thing in some people's hands out there. No control. We don't even know what's going on. Lambi, you want to take a call? Let's take
Yes,
a
we
call.
do have a call. Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Lambi, Mr. G, Dr. Andre, and our young Senator Paris. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Mr. G, you mentioned something I think we have to look deeper into. We need to dig deeper into it. And that is the rule of law. If the CCJ told us that our election process is tainted, it is not good to even elect a good leader, much less for a government. And that decision came down from our high court, Mr. G. And yet, the regime find the best thing to do is to go ahead, with an election anyway. Mr. G, what does that say in terms of the rule of law? Are we not a peaceful people? Are we not a law-abiding people? Are we not Christian people? How can we have our public servant, because these people are working for their servants? Because even good Christian will tell you, the Lord said, let the greatest among you be the least. In other words, I want to confirm what the young senator just said. The best of us have to lead the rest of us. But when you have your own, your people you're looking to guide you, people you put in to serve you, they are the ones who damaging the society, damaging the future of the next generation, damaging law and order. And one message I have for Delbert: politics is not that maple. Politics is an honorable thing. That's why you are honorable. That maple business and that victimization and that envy and that division, my brother, that is not politics. They want you to believe that is politics so you could stay away. But you cannot, that's not politics, my brother. You said it. Politics is the best of us has to lead the rest of us. The people with the best idea, the best vision, competence, accountability, integrity, people with love and respect. You cannot put vagabonds to run a country and expect nothing good to come out from that. A bunch of lawbreakers and criminals that hijack Dominica, and we are beating pussyfooting around with these people, afraid to come up and say what it is. People afraid to talk the truth. A bunch of criminals, hyenas, sucking the blood of the people, and we can't say nothing, we can't do nothing. I rest my case, Mr. G. Thank you, Papa.
You rest your case.
Mr. G.
Yeah. Go right ahead, Delbert.
Mr. G, I want to thank the caller for playing for that contribution because he's right. It's they make it very difficult and they make it very quagmire-ish so that people would not like it. They don't want to get dirty, so they stay away. But he's right. That's not what it is supposed to be. Mr. G, you asked a question earlier on, and I wanted to attempt to address it. We often ask, how is it so difficult for our people to see that the decisions that we're making is what is causing our state of affairs? And Mr. G, it's because somewhere, somehow, we disconnected our political preferences with our standard of living. And we disconnected our responsibility to those two things. There's a disconnect that exists that tells us we can like and prefer and vote who we want and then go out and fend for ourselves. And that's not what it's supposed to be. Your leaders are supposed to provide you with the type of access. Mark you, they're not supposed to do everything for you. I've heard the leader of government on more than one occasion say that the public sector is the engine of growth in an economy, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. And I'm not sure if you were saying that from a realization or from a place of intention. Either way, it is wrong, and that is an indication of why we are where we are.
I think it's from a place of intention, frankly.
Yeah, because if your public sector is your engine of growth, you are intentionally crippling your private sector, which means the disappearance of your middle class. Mr. G, we have to connect our responsibility to our political affiliation and preference to the standard of life and the quality of life the standard of living and the quality of life that we want to have. How is it, Mr. G? And really entertain me on this, that after 24 years of governance, you have no contractors either on the Labour Party side or otherwise that has the competence to participate at the level that some of our foreign nationals are coming to Dominica and do. And your government has been in power for 24 years. That is an absolute betrayal. You have betrayed the people that put you in power. Mr. G, I know all of the contractors, they are my friends. We are no different. We go to the same banks. Some of us go to the same church. Some of us eat at the same restaurants. We are the same. There's no difference between us except for who we like. But all of us have the same struggle while, Mr. G, Dominica is experiencing one of the largest period of cash injection directly in the construction industry. And me and my labor right contractors have to sit on the same sideline together. That is a betrayal. It cannot be right. It means that the policy that our administration is adopting doesn't work for anybody. And that is a reflection of the fact that we have not taken our electoral process seriously enough and decided that even before this period had come, that we needed to change those guys because they weren't working for their friends or their enemies. And that, Mr. G, is something that we must connect our responsibility as humans to, our responsibility as Dominicans. It is our responsibility to change it and to change it now.
Yes, and Dr. Andre, I'm sure you'll agree with that because, in fact, as I said, let's make some comparisons. Yesterday and today. Listen, in the yesteryears, Dominican contractors built the hospitals, they built the schools, they built everything, all the houses. They built all of them. Dominican contractors, they built the government headquarters. They built also that it was Dominican contractors who did those things. The public works used to do all those things. The public works, there's a guy called Ray, you might remember him, Dr. Andre. This man could fabricate any piece of equipment, any tool. We were doing that already. But then that's why I said, Delbert, that this thing is intentional, that the public sector is now declaring itself as the engine of growth, which means all the funds are coming through. Lambi, let's take a call from before we go on.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Good evening to you, Lambi. Good afternoon to you, Mr. G. And I think you have Delbert Paris in there?
Yes, Delbert Paris is there.
Yeah, good evening to you. Mr. G, it's been a while. Just popped into your program really quick.
Well, I figure you study. I figure you're studying for the second PhD now.
No, man. too too much school is not good for the soul, man. We need to
Okay.
get
All right.
we need to get all the learning into action, man. But I've been busy working. But
Uh,
but I have not had a chance to say kudos to the gentleman who was talking. And irrespective of what is going around, every time I hear him, he ignites the the uh, the excitement in me, or the promise in me, that there are a lot of people with potential in Dominica. And he's an example of what circumstances can show us that we have. The guy is well spoken. He thinks when he talks. And as a young man, I think a lot more people should stand up like he did. It's a learning curve for everybody, but Delbert, I just want to say you show promise, because at the end of the day, when all is said and done, Dominica will be there while all of us are gone. And it's always the availability of youth that sustains a population, sustains a people with creative and new ideas. And if we don't have creative and new ideas, then we will perish together. But having said that, you said something that I have lamented over and over again, in the fact that there is the largest infusion of cash into the construction industry, and it seems that it is benefiting foreigners. And you said it's an abuse, or it's a betrayal. I call it treasonous. And the reason why I call it treasonous is because every year the single most important function of the government is to meet in parliament and decide a budget. And I think people have forgotten the basic function of the government when we put parliamentary representatives for these constituencies. Is really and truly to come out there in a budget debate and see how you can allocate, distribute, redistribute, and assign the resources of the state to ensure that every Dominican, irrespective of what political leaning, or what I don't want to say political leaning, of what partisan leaning you are, that they have equal opportunity to benefit. And I have heard over and over that all this money that has been infused in the country comes from the sale of our state resources, which is the citizenship and the passport, the citizenship by investment. And that means that state material belongs to the people of Dominica. Whether you are a laborite, UWPite, Freedomite, it really belongs to the people of Dominica. And the reason our government structure is there is to ensure that the people of Dominica benefit from the resources. Not just a few people making millions, but everybody benefit equally. And what we have seen through the lies, and I believe, Mr. G, and I've said it before, with all the conversations we've had, at the end of the day, if you tell me you plant an orange tree and I am seeing apples, you cannot convince me that you plant an orange tree when it's bearing apples. And there are international elements in Dominica that have been influencing our political process and have frankly created a dictatorship that is commanded by one man. And where we are after 20-something years tells us that the dictatorship is thriving. And as a result, the folks who have put a stronger hold on Dominica are the ones who are benefiting from the sale of our passport. You're telling me in the constituency in Wesley, the single largest construction going on with the so-called sale of our passport. I don't believe it is. I believe there's a sneaky way of having the Chinese involved in building the airport, because what I have seen by the fruit tells me that there is more influence from a foreign country than we are led to believe. But the single largest construction in Dominica, and people sit by and watch foreigners benefit from that without the massive input of Dominicans. It has the potential to transform the economy. And as you say, Mr. Paris, you have this influx of cash in the construction industry. We're talking about building materials. We're talking about labor. We're talking about rental of property, the trickle-down effects of economics, where these people could be renting property in Marigot, Wesley, Calbishi, Anthony, so that they can get residence. You're talking about providing them with food, clothing, and shelter, the basic needs, probably a bank, the national bank set up there. Why isn't that money going through our banking system? How much money are we benefiting through Social Security, through the influx of that cash? How many of these people who are working and gaining millions of our revenue are paying back into Social Security, so it helps the people that are retired so that they can benefit money, and also the country? How many of these people are paying into our health system or even paying some taxation? What is the tax bracket of these companies that are coming to Dominica so that Dominicans benefit? These are some of the questions that we don't even ask ourselves. Furthermore, what is the responsibility of the labor division to make sure that the people of Dominica are first gainfully employed, and what system in place do we have foreigners coming to work there when we have shown there is a lack of labor force? I have not seen any of those things. But as I've always said, it's up to the people to understand the basic tenets of the government, why they have a government structure, and their roles and responsibility into ensuring that the government works for them. And the problem I have seen is our folks are too passive because we sit down and instead of being active in our own direction. Can you imagine every 5 years we have an election, a man comes and begs you for your vote so you can give him power, and
not every 5 years anymore, you know.
Well, exactly my
more like every 2 years.
It's even worse. Can you imagine that the guy we're supposed to come every 5 years and say, sir, I need you to vote for me, I'm going to do this. And you deliberately having construction activity happen in the country, and the people are not benefiting. And Mr. G, give me a second because I haven't been there for. I have given them an example. We had Ross University. It took Ross University about 40 years to build what it was. And look at the economic impact it had on Portsmouth in terms of building and rental and food and Domlec, and see the trickle-down effect. And if you do a simple calculation and assume that every student that came there from the time it started probably paid about, $10,000 US in tuition fee, you can do a quick math and figure out how much money was inputted into Dominica over the 40 years. My friend, it's less than what the construction of the airport is said to cost. It's less. So can you imagine an influx of cash in 40 years had done that to the town of Portsmouth? Can you imagine the amount of trickle-down economic, what the amount of trickle-down economic could do in the next 3, 4, 5 years if that stuff was truly with the intention of benefiting Dominicans? This is not a tragedy. I think this is treasonous. I think it's deliberate. And I think there is too much deception and trickery as to the real intentions of the people in office. That's why we don't get electoral reform. That's why the people are still poor. That's why we only finally this week were able to pay student scholarship. That's why the hospital doesn't have material. That's why people don't get raised. And even the NEP program is used to coerce people to stay in. When you have people who are trained and they're working as temporary employees paid for by the state without a true sense of how you go in a sustainability of the program, and it doesn't benefit the Social Security and the young people because they can't get loans. And they are basically used to keep the permanent employees as hostages, so they can't even come out and demonstrate because there's somebody over the back that can take their job. My friends, we are in a state of deterioration, and when, as one of your callers said, when we elect people, it's not just about education, Mr. G. It's not just about who has the degree and who doesn't have degree. What human beings make decisions on the moral guidance and compass. And I think what we have to do is to keep people who are honorable and responsible and people who have the interests of the population in their hands. Gentlemen, I'm listening. As always, it's always a pleasure listening. And I think we need to continue to fight for the salvation of our country.
Yeah, but it's always a pleasure hearing you too. But Lambi, if you have, just take them as we go along. Yeah. But I really wanted to say it all comes back to the same thing, Delbert and Irving. Elections have consequences. I mean, and our colleague was talking about the case of Ross and so on. I mean, and other companies that were there, like DCP and Candle Industries and Blows Agro Products and all these other various, Paul Pastoronic, Bender Shoe, so many that were there. They're not there now. And some of the local hotels like Garway and so on and whatnot, they're not operating now. So in other words, elections have consequences. Now, when we talked about the question of the engine of growth, and I want us to address that because it's important, because the impression was conveyed that, okay, it is, if not the government, then who? The government is the engine of growth. But let us examine what we have as government. We say, if not passports, then what? Who control the passports? Is one person controlling the passport business? And then when we talk about, the question of the government is going to be the engine of growth. So does it mean that one person is the engine of growth? It's if not passport, so we forget about agriculture, forget about everything else, and we just say, let's focus on passports. One person control the passport. That means that person is the engine of growth. Now we've seen the consequence of that, but that's what I'm saying. We've seen the result. All the other sectors, what has happened to them? You can see what they've fallen by the wayside. They've fallen behind. If you check any of the cities, you'll find the St. Lucia never. St. Lucia was they had a big problem, just like us with leaf spot and all that. St. Lucia has gone past that. Good governance has ensured that they got past that and they're exporting bananas again. What is our position? Doesn't that tell us something about the quality of the governance that we have? We are not competitive. What does it tell us about Antigua and St. Kitts? St. Kitts is way ahead of us in tourism and in all of the fields. They are changing their government from time. They're holding them accountable and telling them, listen, you're making progress, but not enough. I want somebody to make more progress and let's try somebody else. Why is it that our people are so reluctant? Because my father voted for this or my grandfather. That is not helping you because your situation is terrible. You can't pay your light bills. That is why you ought to try something else. Do like the Antiguans. Look, didn't this guy open his playing field, his stadium just recently, that is St. Vincent? Yeah, the guy opened his airport so long. He came and told them, you don't need international airport. And the man put his airport down and he had flights coming in. The man put his sports stadium and the lights working. I saw him in a video. The lights in the sports stadium working, Dr. Andre. So this tells us something about this elections of consequences. And Dominicans better hurry up, ask themselves a question and make a change. And see this business about saying, okay, well, they're only talking about electoral reform. Get together and make sure you get the reforms that you want so you can have a level playing field to determine which government you want in there so that you can get the efficiency and you can get the enabling environment that can make the real private sector the engine of growth. That is what we had before, during Edison James' time, during Patrick John time, during Eugenius' time. The private sector was the engine. That is why we got all these industries. That is why construction sector was working and the people were making money. That's why farmers were building their own homes. Dr. Andre can tell you. He's a historian. He saw through all of those eras. But you remember there's a gentleman, Dr. Andre, called Frank Barron. There was an article I saw surfaced recently on Frank Barron since 2019. Dominicans, watch what's happening there. Ask yourself a question. Isn't that true, Dr. Andre?
I suspect it's very true, quite frankly. And again, that article was penned at a great personal cost in terms of ostracism and so on and so forth. But he was right, because what we've had is basically everything that he was concerned about has come to hunt us in spades. And that is the situation. You see, it's not just a matter of deprivation of farmers, of people in construction industry. It's a sustained assault on our very way of life as a community, what we value. Here's what we've valued historically. The focus is Dominica is quintessentially an agricultural community. The focus that we pride ourselves that the vast majority of Dominicans are landowners, modest plots perhaps, some more than just modest, with the ability to grow our own crops, to market some of our crops if we so choose. And the focus of the government would be to provide markets and so on, to assist, to facilitate, to help generate wealth, to put into place what the economists talk about, the multiplier effect. But we have seen an assault on these very values, an assault on agriculture, an assault on the construction industry, because no longer do we value the quality of work of our people in the construction industry. We have to farm it out. And to add insult to injury, there are no bid contracts. So our constructors, our engineers, architects are not even being given an equal opportunity to participate in that redevelopment, in that type of economic activity, on the spurious reason that we lack the competence. But this whole business about we lacking competence is a ruse, because we know what's happening. We know they love these foreign companies because that is the best engine for money slipped under the table, for exaggerated expenses regarding the construction of this facility or that facility. Go ask the Speaker of the House, the one who's turned tail, the one who told us, if I recall correctly, that a certain bridge should have cost 11 as opposed to $18 million. That is why they love these foreign companies so much. It's graft, it's racketeering. And let us pay attention to that case, involving St. Kitts. And some of the pleadings against some of these persons who were in the heads of government. How much money they got for each passport sold. Wasn't Denzel Washington, Douglas, whatever his name is, wasn't he a special ambassador on behalf of Dominica? Wasn't he allegedly stopped in England because he had tens of thousands of dollars in some suitcase or whatever it is, briefcase or whatever it is? The chickens are coming home to roost. And we can hate the Americans as much as we want. But one thing I like about them, as long as the money crosses the American boundary, they assume jurisdiction. Go and ask the Barbados parliamentarian. Go and ask that fellow, Turks and Caicos? No, from Tortola, I believe. Go and ask them what they found out of the American justice system. And that may turn out to be our biggest salvation, quite frankly, because all this money that is being laundered, inevitably and inexorably, it will touch the American boundary. And the file is piling up. There'll be no DPP to nullipress anything when the clock or the cock crows at midnight.
Yes, but you see, we come full circle. And what we're seeing now is basically the reality. It's a reality check. And we're telling ourselves and we're telling all our people in Dominica, inside and outside, we're telling the world, this is our situation. We're seeing examples of where we're making mistakes. You see, like St. Kitts, the issue there. When will ours come regarding our CBI program? When is it going to be our turn, right? And we've seen the situation in terms of our construction. That's not the case in St. Kitts in the other countries. We've seen the case in our agriculture. Lamb, you want to take a call?
Yes, we do. Caller, please go ahead. Good evening.
Hello?
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Looks like we've lost that call, Lamb.
I guess.
All right, looks like we've lost that call. So, but let me go over to you because I know you want to add to this thing because you're living now, you're a young man, and I have to congratulate you, because I mean, you're coming across very well. I don't know who influenced you. You just naturally wanted to pursue a career in public service. But it seems to me that what you're doing is a very noble thing. And I wish a lot of young people would emulate that and follow your footsteps. You're showing some true leadership spirit there. And a whole lot of young people are looking at you and are going to emulate what you're doing.
Mr. G, well, let's start with that. I have a lot of friends that are much brighter than I am. and they have just as much or even more leadership capabilities, political inclination, and the willingness to serve. But like one of your callers mentioned earlier, not many young people want to take the time or are inclined to getting into this muddy political arena when they have so much that they could be doing, so much potential, so much innovation, so much skill set, and the world is their footstool. My conviction and my involvement and my willingness to serve is that if I have the ability to complain, I also have the ability to be part of the solution. I can't point out the wrong, and when all hands on deck is required to make a difference, I stay back. I can't do that, and I'm hoping that maybe the rest of the young men and women like me who have more capacity and who are able to do more and contribute to the conversation in a very meaningful way will start showing up, because Mr. G, they are there. I'm not special. I'm just one of many who are here. And I'm sure I have a lot of confidence in the young people in Dominica, those who are here and those who are overseas, that when the time is right, they're going to show up and they're going to take this country to where it needs to be, because we have no choice, really. We have no choice. After 24 years, we have grown up with this and we know that it's not right. We've grown up with this administration, and we know that because we go to school with our counterparts in the region and internationally, and we see what they have access to and what they're able to do. They're our age and younger, and they're doing things that we are struggling to do in our native land. And one day, hopefully sooner than later, the rest of us will step up and say enough is enough, and we're ready to take this country to where it needs to go. The rest of us in Dominica still have an opportunity. We still have time to say now that no, the country belongs to us. And it is our responsibility to ensure that what happens next, that we are a part of it. We take responsibility for the development of our country and the future of our children. We can't leave it up to somebody that doesn't know where they're going. We can't leave it up to somebody that has been trying to get it right for 25 years. If it takes you 25 years to get it right, my friend, you don't have what it takes. And that's across the board. That's not on one side. And this is my message, Mr. G. Before, maybe, there could have been a them and us situation. It could have been those for and those against. But where we are now, those lines no longer exist, because we're all in the same quagmire of a degenerative society where our resources have been sold, our livelihoods have been sold, and we are getting the shorter end of a sharp stick. And we know it. We know it. We live it. We see it. And it's time for us to take the bull by the horns and make a change. I like what you said, and the messaging and what you're saying, that elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. And this is the tip of the iceberg. The construction industry. What about tourism? What about agriculture? What are we doing? What has been happening for the last 25 years? And we go to Parliament and we hear a lot of flowery stories, but the number's still a different story. They don't follow the trend. The narrative that is preached and purported, it's not real. And people are suffering because we're allowing politicians to lie and take advantage of us and continually betray us with pie-in-the-sky promises that we know is not real. I think it's time for us to take the responsibility and make the connection with our responsibility to our political allegiance and the responsibility to the life that we deserve to live in our own country. I think we have the time to do it. I think we have the courage to do it. And I think the more we educate and speak up, we can do it. We can do it, and we can make the change that is necessary for us to live and thrive in our own country.
I have to say that I was very happy, Dr. Andre, that Dr. Fontaine and people like Delbert Paris, who were instrumental in getting that summit. I watched, at summit, and I saw 9 young people, young Dominicans like Delbert, received awards. What for? Because they were on top of the game. We hear people talking nonsense about young people lazy, young people this, young people that. I'm not sure which young people they're talking about. I saw 9 young people got awarded for being really top of their game. And it's a pity it's only 9 that they got award, but plenty others who are top of the game that can be awarded. When I listen to what is happening with these young entrepreneurs, making all kind of products, and men and women, making all kinds of products using local material, adding value to that, exporting it, becoming competitive. When you look at the packaging and the labeling and what the contents are, that it's internationally competitive, using local raw materials and adding value to it. So cottage industries at their homes, using the facilities that they have. Why is it that we can give billions of dollars to somebody to do something? We cannot give these young people a couple $100,000 to put their business in order to get them to that level of international competitiveness. Lam, you want to take a quick call before I go to Dr. Andre?
Yes. Caller, you've been there for a while. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hello. Good evening, Mr. G. How are you doing, sir?
Well, I'm probably not as good as you, but I'm working on it.
I hear you. Good evening to my friend Dr. Andre.
Good evening.
Young
Yes,
Senator Dr. Paris. Good evening, sir. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good evening.
Good conversation. Mr. G, Senator Paris made an observation or comment earlier, which I think is worth looking into in greater detail. And that has to do with the Social Security. You may want to do a program specifically on that, because I think that is a volcano waiting to explode. And he is absolutely right in terms of the manner in which that fund one is being currently managed, and the fact that you have very few young persons with the ability to contribute to the fund. Because the way Social Security works is that you can only get what you put into it. Not all of what you put sometimes, but you to benefit out of it, you have to put something into it. And if we have a situation now where several young persons are not able to get employed, meaning that they are not able to make contributions into the scheme, then you may have employers that may have challenges and they themselves may not be making payments on behalf of these employees. You have a number of young self-employed persons who may not be able to contribute to the scheme. You're going to have 20 years from now, 15 years from now, a very old, broke population, because it means a young man today who is 40 years old, 20 years from now when he turns 60, and he has not been able to contribute into the scheme, a young woman would have nothing to get out of the scheme, because he's now 60, 65, and the fact that for the last 20-something years or more, he has not been gainfully employed, he has very little income, because the way the scheme operates in terms of paying off the benefit, I think they do a calculation working the three last best years of your employment, or some formula that they use. It means we're going to have a population on our hands that is old, age population, and with no income. And that's going to be a very, very, very serious matter for any country. Now, contrast that now with the ministers of government, which includes the Prime Minister. Do you know the Prime Minister and members of Parliament receive a pension, a parliamentary pension for every term served? So even with the Prime Minister, when he does that snap elections, a term is considered the 5-year term. But if there are 2 snap elections within a 5-year term, that means he gets an entitlement to 2 pensions for 2 terms during that 5-year term because of the snap election. And he gets a pension for every term served in Parliament. So it means this young person who is out there not taking account, as you say, election has consequences. It means when this Prime Minister gets out of office,
after 24 years, based on how many terms he served in Parliament, he's going to receive a pension. All the other ministers are going to get a pension. And this young man or young woman who currently does not have a job at age 40 or 45, when he or she retires 15 years from now at age 60, he doesn't have a pension. So this is something which I think young people need to pay more attention to, and this is a conversation we need to have. And this is something that will have some serious implications for the country. And like you said, election does have consequences. And I think this is an area which the senator raised, and it's a very, very pertinent area that we need to have some further conversation on. But otherwise, the conversation is good. The matter of electoral reform, of course, I certainly endorsed all of what Dr. Andrea said this evening and Senator Parrish. Just this past Sunday, I was able to be in a conversation with the supervisor of elections for Antigua, Ian Hughes. Mr. Ian Hughes, the supervisor of elections for Antigua. And I mean, I was appalled at the transparency and the structure and the processes that we have in Antigua. I asked the straight question: if an Antiguan comes to the polling station and vote, and he doesn't have his ID card, his voter's ID card, what would happen? He said, he can't vote. Simple. He must have the ID card. And he said the ID card, in addition to the number of areas that he mentioned that is on the ID card, he said the ID cards have several other security features that you cannot see, but it's on the card. And if you lose your card, you have to replace this card. It's $100 to replace the card. And several other areas he mentioned. The commission is a 7-member commission with representatives on the commission appointed by the church council, the business sector, the trade unions. And I mean, we're now saying we're doing a reform and we're going backward from what we currently have or what are some of the best practices in the region.
Well, you see, this is the point. This is a point that we were making a little earlier. I mean, all of these recommendations, as you know, were made by the Electoral Reform Coalition. And Dennis Byron accepted the one about the campaign finance reform, but it's not in what the government is now presenting. Okay?
Right.
Now, I'm pretty sure
I think we
have this
but I think we have to stay prepared and take action. And I just wanted to call in and made reference to the social security aspect and to say good conversation, good discussion. I'm listening. Have a good evening.
Yes, thanks a lot for calling. I believe it's a good idea to probably have a conversation about that social security thing, gentlemen. But you know what I would really love? If we're going to have that conversation first, a member of the top management of the Social Security to participate in that discussion. Let's explore all possibilities to see how we can make what we have the best that it can be. Because you can see the kind of problems that we're encountering. Our population is not that big. We have an aging population. Our young people are not working. Really, how are you going to sustain this? I mean, hopefully, I really hope to God that the investment committee of the Social Security is doing everything they can to invest the assets very wisely so that the returns can be there, so that there's something coming out of that to be able to pay those people who are going to be retiring, because obviously the contributions are not coming in the way they would like them to come in. And particularly because most of the money that is being invested in the country is going out, and most of these foreign companies, I hardly think they're paying any Social Security. So all of the funds, the billions of dollars that is passing through, Social Security not getting anything from that. So Dr. Andrea, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on all of this, because it seems to me that something needs to be done about that.
Well, we cannot just look at Social Security in isolation. This is part of the overall context in terms of the approach of the Dominican government to disempower its workers. Now, you made mention of the number of young folks who received awards during the economic conference not too long ago. But the question is this: what is being done to facilitate or to assist them, to give them loans, to give them some technical know-how, to create the enabling environment for them to take the initiatives that they've started to build up their plant and to explore markets, to expand their operations and so on. what is being done. And you see, here's the problem. The problem is those initiatives, they run headlong into one of the central policies of this government to ensure that you remain dependent on them, to ensure that you do not prosper based on your own resources, to ensure that if you find your own markets in Guadeloupe, to ensure that farmers are discouraged from patronizing you. Now, here's another initiative that we could take if we were serious about agricultural production and empowerment and putting money into the hands of farmers. Rosie Douglas, of blessed memory, he had some strong connections with the radical intelligentsia and the progressive people in Guadeloupe and Martinique. They were very supportive of him. They assisted him financially and in certain initiatives and so on. If these folk were interested in preserving the legacy of Rosie, would they not have forged relationships with many of those persons? And the working class in Guadeloupe and Martinique in particular, they are very educated, they are very progressive, and they do not stand for nonsense. They assert their rights at every opportunity. Would we not be tapping into that resource in terms of getting markets, in terms of increasing the number of visitors from those countries, in terms of organizing, whether it's an exhibition, fraternal kind of exchange in terms of the movement of people? Would we not have tapped into that resource in a much more significant fashion than we have? But we are not interested in those things. All our eggs are in the sales of passport basket. Why? Because it only benefits a few. And that is the raison d'etre of governance in Dominica, that a few shall prosper. So the whole question as to what's going to happen in 20 years with respect to social security, it doesn't mean anything to the folk, because they will not be reliant on that. And the whole question as to the basket case in terms of the Dominican, French, Cuban, Chinese hospital, it doesn't matter, because the folk don't use it. They preach how advanced it is, but as soon as they get ill, they get out of Dodge. They go to the States, they go to Martinique, they go to Guadeloupe. They want nothing to do with that hospital. So there's no interest. They have nothing invested in preserving the quality of care. They have no interest in preserving the welfare of retirees, making sure that they have a decent retirement, that they're not living from paycheck to paycheck. They have no interest, except, of course, if they're somehow related to these folk. But if there's no relation, if there's no political connection, let them eat cake. That's the attitude. Let them eat cake. And that's why, as I said, all these folks, who live abroad and they talk about their rights, ask them one thing. When they got the check for aid for COVID, how many of them sent that check to a relative, a poor person in Dominica? Not a single one of them. Not a single one of them. But they're talking about rights. But when they reap the benefits of living in an adopted country, it's all theirs. And to hell with those that stick it up in Dominica. We have to change the sorry scheme of things entire. And every journey begins with a one humble step. But it has to be a journey of empowerment. What are we doing to empower those folk who eke out a living on an agricultural plots, those vendors, those other persons? What are we doing to make their lives a little better? We have to go to their farms as opposed to expect them to come to Roseau and sell on the sidewalk, competing with 100 other vendors for the same dollar. We have to start thinking outside of the box. Thank you.
Delbert, it's not a question of what are we doing. I think it's what we ought to do right now. And what we ought to do, again, as you said, is you have to ensure that you choose the best of us will lead the rest of us. Because you want efficiency, you want results, you want productivity, you want goals. For example, I remember that the young entrepreneurs, whole set of business, young people asked to register for some money or the other. And some of them were told, okay, go to the Aid Bank, they give you $30,000. Most of them couldn't get that, but it's not $30,000 is not what they need. I mean, some of the ideas that some of these young people have, some of the production that they're undertaking, some of the goods, these goods have international competitiveness. Some can go on the shelf of any supermarket anywhere in the United States or Canada because they're competitive, good product. But they might need $500,000, not $30,000 to get the business going. You have to respect these young people. They're doing great things. They're taking raw materials and adding value, convert it into product that the world wants. And the world is ready. Some of them are actually exporting these things to Guadeloupe and Martinique and the United States. They are doing that already. Why don't we help them to do it better? Make themselves international. But you know that even if you go into manufacture or process anything today, even if you sell it on the shelf in a supermarket in Dominica, it is side by side with goods coming from anywhere else in the world. So it has to be internationally competitive, correct? So I'm just saying, Delbert, that young people, and I'm glad that you know so many of these young people are progressive and already want to start taking control of the future. And I hope that you can encourage them, come into it, take over. I mean, we have to hand over the baton to the young people who are enterprising, who are smart, and who now are very informed about IT, all these new things that are being developed now by Apple and all this. These are tools that a lot of young people can use to do so many progressive things that people like us can't do. Let us hand over the baton to these people. Let them come, and I wish they would really come. They should not wait. They must come in now, because listen, they grew up for the last 25 years. It did not happen, so they know it will not happen under this regime. So they have to come into the thing and start putting people. Elections, as I said, have consequences. Ensure that the next election that is held in Dominica, young people come forward, put your name in the hat, put your name in the ring and be counted. Take control of your future, your destiny. Because what we see now is that the young people are just losing everything. The parents have to sell out everything. Look, they take everybody land in Wesley. I mean, they're taking land all over the place. So it seems to me that what is it that the young people are going to be left with? It is time for them to come and take a hold of this thing, get involved. And I know, as you know, there's a lot of brilliant young people out there like you. I hope you can galvanize them to get involved, Elbert, because you can see it's time to do something now.
I totally agree, Mr. G. Let's talk about the innovation and the ingenuity of our young people and people who have, by the way, some of this ingenuity was birthed out of struggle. It was birthed out of hard times. It was birthed out of young people who went away to study, came back and couldn't find meaningful employment. And they had to create something for them to survive. And that, out of adversity, an unimaginable triumph was born. But what happens to the majority of them is that they don't have access. And that's what young people want, huh? Don't get it twisted. Young people don't want handouts.
Right.
And the culture of handouts have helped to cripple the ingenuity and the innovation of a lot of our young people. But they don't want handouts. What they want is access. They want access, and they want a development partner that will hold their hand for a period of time, help them to get out of the mud with the idea that they have, show them a few blueprints as to who they should talk to, innovations that they can add, how to scale their business, how to scale this idea, how to access and manage financing in the infancy period of their innovative process, and ensure that they can scale this thing to the moon. That is what young people want. Young people want a development partner in their government, in the people that they vote for, in the people that's so interested in giving them a party and a fete every time an election cycle comes around. They want that person to partner with them, not continue to keep them in a jar in a glass jar and shake it every time and say how they are so proud of the small business. Young people don't want to be involved in small business. We want to do big business too. And we want access to do big business. And young people in Dominica, in and outside of Dominica, connected to Dominica, have the potential to do that. But we need a government that is willing to partner with us. We need a government that is willing to put its money where its mouth is and give us the access. Take us to the expos. Carry the young people. Develop a qualifying criteria. Develop something that, such as a think tank or something similar to Shark Tank. Those of us who've looked at that show understand the viability of it. But why can't we do that here? Why can't the same administration gather a group of investors and philanthropic individuals who come in and look at the ideas of young people, help them to develop it more, help them to fill in the gaps that exist with the innovation, and help them to scale the business. Mr. G, those kind of innovative support is what is going to build our private sector for the next 25 years and ensure that we have a base. These same young people will employ thousands of other young people like themselves to ensure that Dominica is the best place to live and enjoy life 20 years from now when a lot of us are not here. But if we continue to stifle their growth and their innovation now and put them in a nice little plastic jar called the jar of small business and innovation, and always keep them in a niche in a tent on the side of the road, we will not have a private sector and a growing, thriving manufacturing and innovative industries in the years to come. And that's what young people are looking for. I know that because I am one of them. They are my friends, they are my cousins, they are my siblings, they are me, and I know them very well. And I'm Mr. G, they're there. They will get encouraged. They will see me and other young people like me. Like I told you, I'm not special. I'm just one of the guys who out of the blocks early and who's willing to put my mouth and my actions where my complaints are and willing to be part of the solution for Dominica going forward. And they will start coming out in droves. I'm encouraging them all the time. And mark you, they are the ones encouraging me too, because they see the struggle, they see the innovation, they see the support, they see the involvement, and they like it. I think they're encouraged. And don't mistake them. Don't mistake their silence for absence. They're there, they're present, and they're supporting the movement for change and for getting Dominica to where it wants to be. Our young people need access, and once they get that development partner, they will start showing up for themselves.
Delbert, I'm going to ask you to sort of make your closing remarks, but let me just say this, and then I'll go to Dr. Andre. Let me just say this. I am not underestimating the young people. I have a lot of confidence in the young people. Two things I want to say is that I've seen them in action. In fact, we're doing a program on the radio every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon from 4 to 5, which is called the Nature Island Small Business Buzz. And every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, we have a different entrepreneur coming in there and talking about their products and all the things they went through and what their requirements are to take their business to the next level. So we are working with them, and we expect to work with them for a very long time to come. I believe, I understand from the organizers of the last economic summit that the next move is to have a major national exposition with all of the works of all of these young people. You probably find at least 100 or more of them that have products that they could put on display. Probably a lot more than 100 of them, and all kinds of products using local materials, all kind of crafts and art and so on. We're looking forward to that, because I'll tell you what, because I did a national trade show many years ago. It was for over a period of 3 weeks. It was the most successful thing we've ever done. And so many, you had manufacturer, people who were doing carpentry, making furniture, people doing all kinds of things, and they're exhibiting, and they became solid businesses somewhere along the line. I myself, because we organized it because I was in the garment manufacturing business. We had 100 and something people employed, and then we were exporting to every single island in the Caribbean, from Jamaica down to Guyana. Any young person who's interested and has some time can do it. They can do it too. That's what I'm saying. We went, as a matter of fact, we went to CDI in Brussels, and we found an Italian company who was willing to work with us to make shoes for export to the United States and the Caribbean. Any young person can do that if they have the opportunity. And I believe that some of them are more bright than me, they have more ideas than I have. I have confidence in the young people. Take my word for it. And I'm really hoping that they can get this. This is what the Invest Dominica Authority is supposed to do. You know what you're saying here. They're supposed to bring investors and these young people together so that they can help them to grow. That is where the enabling environment, policy environment is created and implemented, but it's not happening. So I'm just wanted to leave that with you to give you the assurance that I certainly believe in the young people, the young entrepreneurs, and I believe they have a great future ahead of them. But they have to understand that it has not happened for them over the last 24 years. If you don't make a change, it's not going to happen for you for the next 24 years. Do like Antigua, do like St. Lucia, do like St. Kitts, do like Grenada, do like St. Vincent, all these other islands. They're moving ahead. The young people have more opportunities. As you know, the only way to do that is to change your government now and then keep them on their toes. Make sure they're working for you. They work for you. It's not the other way around. So I just wanted to leave that with you to get you to understand that, young people appreciate it. It's just that they're not getting the opportunity from the partner who they expect to give them that opportunity. So let me get your closing remarks before I go to Dr. Andre.
Mr. G, I'm looking forward to that entrepreneurship engagement. I think it's a good idea. Anything that brings our people together in a way where we can continue to talk about the solutions that we ourselves are willing to be a part of is a good thing. I think coming out of the summit, I'm hoping to see a lot of action steps going forward. There was a lot of good people presenting at the summit. We looked and addressed at a number of key critical economic drivers and critical sectors that is responsible for Dominica's growth, the challenges that they are currently experiencing, and how we can overcome those challenges. I'm looking forward to some key steps going forward from that, from the post-summit committee. For the entrepreneurship conference that is coming up, I'm hoping that, like you mentioned, I don't know if you still have contacts in Brussels, maybe you can call a couple of them and in the United States and elsewhere to come and look at some of these young people, to see what possibilities exist for some type of partnership. And because we don't want it to just be another expo, because we know the products, we see them. How can we get them together? Is it possible for us to group some of them together? Can they form a conglomerate where they can partner together? We can do all the paperwork. We have Dr. Andre, he can help us with the fine print and the legal ramifications of things like that. But group some of us together. We can get a warehouse and start doing mass production without losing the integrity of the products, and finding regional and international partners for these young people to start scaling these products, so they themselves can start employing others, providing reasonable, sustainable employment for others like themselves, and creating other innovative opportunities for others like themselves as well. Mr. G, as you will tell, I am a big proponent of do for self. Mm-hmm. While we hold our government accountable and we understand the ramifications and the consequences of elections, we still have to be ready and willing to be part of the solution and do the work ourselves. So I'm looking forward to the Entrepreneurs Conference. I'm hoping to be a part of it and hoping that we can get some people in that will drive some scalability into our young people and their innovation. In terms of closing remarks, Mr. G, we talked about a lot of things. But one of the things that I want us to remember as we part ways this evening, for us and our listeners and the people who will listen to that coming out of this session, is that elections have consequences. Mm-hmm. The consequences about elections are not just in relations to who wins or who loses, because the consequences will affect every single one of us. It will affect us in a very, very intrinsic way, and will affect us for a long time. We have seen the effects of that, we have seen the negative effects of these consequences over a 24-year period. I think it's time that we, as a country, as conscious people, take responsibility for the consequences of our actions and demand change, demand better. And we ourselves make a conscious effort and a promise to ourselves, a promise and a commitment to ourselves to be part of the solution going forward, to ensure that we are happy and that we're comfortable with the sustainable consequences that we reap from the choices that we make as it relates to our administration.
Yeah, you're quite right. Not only sustainable, but it's scalable. Because I mean, you have to grow, right? You have to expand, right? Now, one of the reasons, Dr. Andre, that I'm saying all of that, and I want to leave on this word because I believe the future is in the hands of young entrepreneurs. I believe in the private sector. I believe in people who are creative and willing to work hard to get things done like Delbert. And I remember there was an opportunity for me in that, and you see, we talk about this enabling environment. But the environment when I was doing this encouraged me to go to CDI in Brussels, Center for Development of Industry in Brussels. And I was able to get them to bring somebody from Italy, because Italy has what they call SACI, which is Export Credit Insurance Guarantee Facility. So these people who are shoemakers, great shoemakers, they had nothing to lose to send the equipment down for us, because the Export Credit Guarantee Insurance Facility will ensure that if the thing doesn't go well, they will get repaid. We were just going to get the equipment, get all the know-how, get people to set it up, and then all we do is to repay them over time, and they let a local financial institution hold the collateral or whatever it is, so that the equipment will be used as a collateral, and so that they can collect the monthly installments that we're paying to repay for this thing. So there was nothing to put out. Why is it that our young people cannot have a similar kind of somebody needs to point them to where they can go to get these opportunities? I was just saying these things. I was leaving that, Dr. Andre, as a parting word for young people. Let them know that there is hope. All is not lost. What they need is that partner that Delbert is talking about, that will hold their hand to take them to the next level. You don't want to hand out, you want to hand up. Right? So create the environment for them and help them to get to where they have to go. All right? Because there are institutions and organizations set up to do exactly that. We need to take advantage of it. So, Dr. Andre, you're much smarter than I am. So let me get your closing remarks on all of these thoughts tonight.
My experience in the realm of production is very limited. All I can take credit for is building a fall cage in my teenage years. But the young people, we have to understand, we have to look at this from a historical context. Bear in mind, some of our persons who were very much involved in agro-processing, look at the humble stats that they had. Old Nassif started to make product in his kitchen. Leo Money-God Emmanuel, he learned the rudiments of processing grapefruits into that iconic brand Dumb Fruit by getting hold of a book called Braverman, and a Jewish fellow. And although he only had a high school education, he taught himself the rudiments of processing. And when that business collapsed in '68, he immediately pivoted to realizing the potential in terms of the sale of scrap metal. He financed himself and he moved on. Post-COVID, many enterprising persons in the United States, in North America and elsewhere, they started their own modest industries and companies engaged in myriad types of production of various types of products. Our young persons have to be animated with that type of entrepreneurial skill, that type of flair, that mentality that suggests that I will achieve it with or without you. Because quite frankly, the landscape in Dominica in terms of getting assistance from the directorate is bleak if you don't share the same affinity in terms of political allegiance. The good news is that at no time has it been better than now from a historical perspective to get into some type of agro-processing or type of some business venture of your own. The internet is inundated with examples of successful people who started very modestly, of persons who dropped out of university and ended up setting up billion-dollar industries, of trying to crowdfund or go fund, of seeking alternative means in terms of getting their businesses off on a successful position, so that there is significant hope. And there is significant hope in unity. There's significant hope in if these young persons, they get to know what each other is doing. They pool their resources, their experiences, hopefully their talents, to ensure that if one succeeds, the other also succeeds as well. The government may not come on board, but so be it. The world we live in today, as I said, has made it much easier to be successful if we want it as badly as we should want it. And if we continue to be motivated by that famous song of Jimmy Cliff, you can get it if you really want, but we must try until we succeed at last, then success is much closer than the horizon. So, to the young persons, I say to you, be motivated by your hunger for success. Be motivated by the realization that success is your best revenge. Be motivated by the success that every impediment thrown in your way is actually an incentive to achieve what you'd like to achieve. Don't be fettered by the naysayers, because in my experience, there's always more naysayers than yay-sayers. There are always more persons telling you why you can't do it as opposed to why you can. Don't be fettered by the type of mentality that I grew up with, that business or getting involved in business is something to be frowned upon. It is basically relegated to those who did not have the educational wherewithal to go and learn the professions. Free yourself. Free your mind. The world is your oyster. There is much to achieve, even when the landscape appears bleak. So, to those young folk and others, you can be young in spirit, but not necessarily young in age. Don't give up your dreams. Don't give up your hopes. As long as you have breath, as long as you can see, you can talk, you can feel, you can walk, you can dream, the sky is still the limit. And I say that despite the fact that there's much to be very concerned about in this small land of ours. But the mind is a powerful thing. And that's why I like the motto of this African American organization. The mind is a powerful thing to waste. So go forth and make your mark. Thank you and good night.
Yes, and Dr. Andre, as we leave here tonight, I just want to leave the young people with one thing. You know, if you do the same thing the same way every time, you'll get the same. Don't expect to get a different result. So I want to say to the young people, disabuse yourself of any kind of thinking that you can just go as usual we've been doing the last 24 years, where you've got nowhere, and think that you're going to get somewhere by just doing the same. Oh, so my grandfather was this, my great. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Look around you. The same islands that you want to go to, like St. Kitts and St. Lucia, they're making a difference by making a change. You have to make a change from time to time. New ideas, new people, new thoughts, new direction, paradigm shift. That is what it's going to take. So disabuse yourself of this thinking that because your grandfather, your great father, you must do the same thing. All right? It really does not matter. You have to do what is right for you. What is happening now is not right for you. It's right for some foreign people who are coming in, they're taking everything, and you can see it, right? So what I'd like to say to the young people, here is an opportunity. The next election that we have in Dominica, get involved. Those of you, get involved. You want to become a candidate, become whatever you want to be, but try to take control of your society, of your country, or economy. Use your talent, your skills, contribute that to your development of your country and to yourself. It's not going to happen for you because you happen to adore some politician somewhere. It did not happen for the last 24 years. It's not going to happen for the next 10 years if you put them there. Take control of this thing. Get in there yourself. Support people who are like-minded, who are thinking progressively, efficiently, and who are going to bring new ideas into this thing so you can do better. I'm suggesting that young people, I know that you have the power to do it. And as I listen to Delbert tonight, I think if all these young people are there like Delbert, I think the future of Dominica is in good hands. So I just want to leave on a positive note to say this, that young people, you do not need these handouts. Why? Because they have got you nowhere. What you need is a hand up. Fight for it. Take it. It's yours. So the next election that's coming up is your election. It's your time. Take it. Stand up and be counted. Take it to make sure you do the things that you want to make your life better and to have a better future for yourself and the family that you intend to have. Take it. Take the opportunity. So Delbert, I'm looking for you now to take the lead in mobilizing these young people to come on board and let their dreams come true. So I just want to say good night to everybody who's been listening to us on the internet, on Facebook and on YouTube and everywhere you are in the region, at home and abroad. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We hope that we help to put some ideas on the table and to clarify some things and to inspire you to stand up and be counted and be the best that you can be. Reach up for excellence. Essentially, that's what it is. So good night, Delbert. Good night, Dr. Andre. Good night, Lambi. Good night, Sherwin. Take care, everybody. See you next time.
Good night.
All right. Bye now.
Oh, na 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 na. Oh, na 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 na. Oh, na 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 na.